we're gonna dive into this and just kind of share some of the things we experienced in our own lives for 2022, what our plans and thoughts and insights for 2023 look like. And primarily, we're doing this so that our audience, people who are following along with us out there, can maybe start to ask some of the same questions of what their year was like and start to plan and prep themselves for prosperous, productive, and exciting 2023. Uh, so to get started with that, Bridget, I want to ask a question. If you had to summarize your 2022 as best you can into one word, what would that be?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you, Bryan, for the opportunity to co-host. This has been a very informative ride for me in 2022. Of course, I've known you forever, but I've learned so much from you this year about communication, patience, and other ways to process and navigate through life. So thank you, and I appreciate you.
You're most welcome. It has been a great year.
So if I had to describe 2022 in one word, it would be pressed.
Yeah, okay.
Pressed exclamation point.
Pressed. All right. Interesting. So hold on to your explanation for that because I want to give mine first so it can sit out there with our audience. And then we can start to kind of give why we kind of chose these words. So
Okay.
my word is actually challenging for the year. So it was a very challenging year in a lot of different ways on many different levels and aspects in life. And we'll dig into that a little bit deeper as we move forward. But that's my word to sum up 2022. So for our audience and our listeners out there, what we'd like to challenge you to do at the moment is see if you can think of a singular word that kind of sums up what your 2022 was like. And if you be willing, share it in the comments or put it in the chat, in the live chat that we have going here in the session, because I'd like to get some feedback to get a feel for what everybody else's year really boiled down to from a singular word standpoint. All right, that said, Bridget, how about you give a little bit of background, some of the things, why you feel pressed for 2022?
Okay, so this whole year has been very pressed for me in terms of personal and professional relationships, situations. And so, for one, changing the direction and format of what my mentor program looked like. What it would look like in Houston versus what it looked like in Nacogdoches, or what it looks like in Nacogdoches. So I was pressed in changing the direction, changing the format. How I envisioned it was not necessarily how God had planned it, and so I had to press to change that and still be somewhat successful in the purpose that He had given me. Next was moving in an unfamiliar area in Houston, and then being comfortable in my new way of living, so to speak, and navigating the change of my family dynamics.
Mhm.
I had to press to do that. Also, learning how to peel back layers of my inner me, in which we did that during the summer with our podcast, The
Mhm.
Transformation, Truth, and Trust.
Mhm.
And it forced me to change the way I thought about my role in relationships, in my career, and in my purpose as a mentor. And then the last one, it's been pressed for me to not to say my truth, but to walk in it consistently and trust in my own decisions. And I think I've talked about that in this year. Not being able to trust my own decisions. So I was pressed, and I had to be consistent in that, and walking in my trust and trusting my own decisions, in all areas of my life. But I'm an overcomer. So I did press, but I did make my way through. Here we are, December
Mhm.
31st, 2022.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and as you say, I see what you say by press because a lot of different things coming in a lot of different areas that you basically had to kind of felt like you were squeezed, being squeezed
Mm-hmm.
from a lot of different directions, right? So yeah, definitely press. With the flip
Yes.
side of that coin is, I think a lot of those things, and from a personal aspect for you, you brought them on yourself. So I'm not saying that it's the world's fault. It's like you set out a map to accomplish some things, right?
Yeah, and I don't regret it. I don't
Yeah.
regret it, but I did. But the way it was laid out, the way I laid it out was different than the way it was actually laid out for me.
Mhm.
And so I had to rewrite the script, so to speak. It's like, okay, that's not what I plan to do. So
Right.
let me change it. And so I was pressed to change it. And it wasn't going the way it didn't go the way when I changed when I moved my mentor program to Houston, it didn't go anyway like I thought it would go, like anyway. And
Mhm.
so I had to change the direction, and I was pressed for time because I don't want it to be still be March and April, then May, then before we know it, we're here at December. So I was pressed for time to make that change, and I couldn't do anything about my living situation and changing that.
Mhm.
But it was like you said, it was something that I chose to do, but I was pressed to hear because one thing affected another thing, and so I was pressed to make some decisions that affected where I live and changing the dynamic of my family, and just over time peeling back those layers. I mean, you want to be your authentic self and show up as your authentic self. So I had to find out more about the inner me
Correct.
to
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah. And as you said, you're a fighter, you're a survivor, you're going to push through. And I think that's one of the things that you definitely learn about yourself when you're having a pressed year or a challenging year, as I define mine. So let me give you some of my thoughts. It's challenging. It's okay. Why, Brian? Why was the year so challenging? And it really boiled down to just a couple of things. It was fairly simple, in all honesty. Um, I have always been a person who's been that glass half full type personality, very optimistic versus being pessimistic. And I struggle with that this year for some different reasons, just trying to stay on the optimistic side of things in general for 2022. And so that forced me to really start to evaluate, okay, where is that coming from? What's the driver for that? Why am I reacting differently than I normally have pretty much all of my life, right? From an optimistic versus pessimistic standpoint. And I actually kind of figured out what it was. It's very interesting. And some others may be able to relate to this, other people may not, but here's really what it is. And that is the quote unquote new normal that we're living in our lives and in our world post pandemic and how things are. So I really had to start to reflect back on not just 2022, but 2021, 2020, and even back to 2019, because I got back to that point and I looked at where my life was, the direction things were going, my mood, my attitude, everything coming out of 2019, going into 2020 was all on a big upswing. It was all looking amazing and on every level. And then the pandemic happened and changed the world for all of us, right? Uh, and then so now we're living in this new normal. Right? We're not back to where we used to be. I don't think we'll ever get back to that in a specific way. So I really have struggled, or I'm still struggling to actually find my stride with the new normal. Haven't gotten to a comfort level with it at all. So I think that's where I'm really starting to get used to that and trying to adapt and adjust and adapt myself to that new environment.
I think that, well, just watching you over this year and the highs and the lows and your conversation and your tone, and your moods, they've gone, up and down.
Yeah.
But in the same way with myself as well, my moods and my tone and my situations and different areas of my life have gone up and down. And so we saw each other go through this whole thing through the whole year. But I took it as a because some points in my life this year I felt like I was moving backwards, and
Mm,
then the next thing you know I'm just shooting straight forward to some big ideas, and I saw the same thing in you, and it's almost like an arrow, how you have to pull an arrow back before you make that shot, and then let it go for it to 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 hit the target. And
mm,
so I feel like that's where we are, and that's where we've been this year, is being pulled back, like someone's in a slingshot or whatever, like bow and arrow, to release what's going to go straight to the target, to where we're trying to go. So that's what I've seen in both of us in different areas this year.
that's a great analogy for that because it is that way. You have to, as they say, sometimes go backwards a few steps to actually get momentum to go forwards. And using that arrow concept is a great way to say it. And I think it has been a year for you, as you said, with feeling pressed, and for me, challenging, of kind of really having to grind to stay on your grind, to try to get refocused to stay on your grind, because there have been some of those days and some of those weeks even where it's just like, I don't want to deal with this BS anymore, right? Um, but you also have a plan. You're on a mission. I'll use that word, and there are going to be challenges as you work your way through it. So I think that that's also a very important thing to share and to let everyone know. It's never too late to uh, adopt, adjust, as you said, with your mentorship program. You had this idea in your head, and it it looked nothing like that when you actually started to have to get into it, to have to do it. It's just like, then what do? You throw your hands up and you quit and you give up, or you start to work your way through an adjustment, adjust the plan, and move in a different direction. So I think that's a key component of.
And in both of our areas, in both of our lives, I believe there was just this this quote that kept coming to me, and I don't know about you, it was, there's no room for lax, there's no room for lax, because, I had this system set up for beautiful girls, and then, planning, building bridges. And I'm like, okay, it's going great in that, because this is what I'm going to do. So I'm just going to come over here and I'm just going to do it like this. And I'm just going to sit back and watch it grow.
Mhm.
And there was no room for lax in my life. It was no room for sitting back and watching stuff happen. I had to get in there, and work hard and change some things, even, when I did not want to, or when I didn't see what I needed to work on. I had to come back, and okay, well, and you did the same. I had to, okay, so this is different now. But we got to press on. So what we have to do next, and what's next, and what's next, and what's next, and we just walk through that process.
Yeah, as you see, Breon just made a comment here.
Brandon,
Walk in trust and press on, and that's true. Sometimes you just
thank you,
have to
Brandon.
have faith and have belief, and a lot of what we focus on, and as Bridget, we say it 1,000 times, is the word self, right? Self, 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 self. And when he says walk in trust, that's probably the number one place where trust needs to start. You got to trust in yourself, whatever it is you're
Yourself.
feeling, believing, thinking. Trust in that, and just try to stand on that. Let that be what props you up, because that's going to be a very important thing.
And I was
As
saying, looking back in 2022, the podcast topics that we've done, it hit home so many times, if not before. Hello, Tracina. If not before we did the topic, but certainly afterwards, it's almost like, okay, you're going to be talking this good game. Let me see how you work this out. Let me see how you walk this out. The things that you gave the audience, the techniques that you gave the audience, the tips that you gave the audience. Let me see how you're going to actually walk this out. And in my situation, I would say in my life, I had to walk out some of the podcast topics that we actually did, because I hadn't really did that before, but I researched it, so I knew what to do, and that's what I spilled out, and I had to actually walk that.
Absolutely. That's so true. It was a learning as we go experience for us too. In some ways, conceptually, we had different ideas and different ways we knew we wanted things to go, but in actual delivery, not so much, right? Because
Mhm.
we framed it this way, but man, it took a left turn or it took a right turn, and that's the way it goes. But that's actually the beauty of the whole thing, is as you evolve your way through it, you learn more about yourself, the process, and again, going back to what Breon said, trusting. Uh, is that Brandon? Sorry, and I think I was getting them mixed up because Breon is on. And he just said checking in.
Oh,
So
okay.
I
Hey,
I, I, I
Brian.
saw both names. So excuse me, gentlemen, for getting the names crossed up there. And Christina, hello to you too, is for joining us today. I want to share one that Patricia just put up, and she said have been her words for the year, and challenging, which I can relate to, and also growth.
Which
And
I
I
can
think,
relate to.
I think growth is another one that, for us, for sure. And it's interesting, Bridget, I was kind of, as you said, reflecting on the year, and that's the whole point of what we've been doing. And I went, man, the first podcast or a live stream, whatever term you want to use, that Bridget and I did was the first week in February. And so it's like, man, 11 months just flew
That
by like
fast.
that.
Yes.
It went by so quick, but the growth and the learning and the experience from that has been uh, priceless. In all honesty,
Oh,
it really has.
absolutely.
It really
Absolutely.
has been priceless.